Good day, everybody, and welcome to Gotta Rank 'Em All, the wackiest show that airs on Hoen's TVs. I definitely am not wearing the toupee and mustache of the old man I killed, and today we have a good one for you all, as we will be ranking the Gen 1 Pokemon OG, Pinsir. Pinsir is a super effective example of a Pokemon that does everything right, and by the end of this short video, you'll understand exactly why you should be putting respect on this good sir's name. I mean, for one, it's one of those few Pokemon that actually follow the homework assignment of a pocket monster, and does so while sporting an ingenious creative concept that epitomizes its monster bug nature. But before we get to these special things specific to Pinsir that make its design so darn effective, we have to talk about what Pokemon does so right in general as to make its monsters still so damn appealing to all of us after a quarter of a century. And that never-ending success lies in what I like to call the Pokemon magic, which is comprised of two factors. First is that its designers incorporate into most all its Pokemon the mascot motif, which is anthropomorphizing creatures through human elements like bipedalism, two human eyes with visible sclera, a flat face, and front-facing eyes. There's also juvenile features like large eyes and larger heads in proportion to the body, which is what makes human and animal babies so damn adorable to us. All this anthropomorphizing is done so that we find Pokemon more appealing and become so easily attached to the suckers. This decision by the developers to go full on Oprah and hand out a mascot-like status to so many of these suckers is inarguably one of the main factors their monsters are so incredibly appealing, recognizable, memorable, and able to easily overshadow the countless monster bestiaries of all other games. And I get it. Bug monsters like Pinsir or Scizor are not exactly cuteness crack like Charmander or Eevee, but your skin doesn't crawl when you see them, or any other bug type Pokemon for that matter, right? Exactly, this is how Pokemon makes bugs much more appealing and relatable to a general audience, while not invoking any of the apprehensions or phobias they may have towards purely insect-like features. By sporting bipedal stances instead of a hexapedal one, flatter faces, front-facing eyes, pupils, and visible sclera instead of compound eyes, and two arms and legs all at once, they bypass the characteristic insect features that would make people antsy. And it's also important to note that this approach stems in part from Japan's kawaii culture. This is why Pokemon only could have come from Japan, and also the reason why they constantly put out so much cuteness crack, while the other side of the world is focused on being edgy. In addition, anthropomorphizing also serves to further distinguish Pokemon from their real life or mythological counterparts. This is because, as you'll notice, most animals are not bipedal, and just by making your creatures bipedal, it automatically helps to distinguish it from 99.9% of the animal kingdom and all other fictional monster designs that are just facsimiles of such. This can also be used to reimagine mythical monsters as well, like was done with Charizard. And that's what makes many Pokemon come across as more fascinating and exotic to us. Okay, now the second element of Pokemon magic is the Pokemon philosophy of creative design. For those of you who are not aware or want to make designs just as good as Pokemon, listen well. What this Pokemon philosophy is the very minimalistic and creative incorporation of only the most essential elements of their animal, fictional, artificial, mythological, thematic, and elemental inspirations, which are most conducive to connoting a badass or cute design, while at the same time eschewing many superfluous elements and details that would end up clashing or overcomplicating its design. No hate on Digimon, trust me. I really like the Digimon anime and many of its Digimon, but this gaudiness of throwing everything in together, not simplifying elements within the design, and not having any artistic discretion or selectivity leads to clashing, overcomplicated designs that have always been the Achilles heel of Digimon's designs. Such extravagance is not necessary to making a memorable design or to connoting power, as you can see from Pokemon's legendaries. It's more of an effortless attention grabber. And that's why Pokemon in contrast are so creative, easy on the eyes, and have such incredible memorability. To add on to this, they also take a simplistic approach in everything, portraying complex details like scales almost never, but simplifying them on the few occasions that they do. They portray details like scutes on a shell in fewer numbers, simplistically and in a pleasant pattern. And they portray fur as zigzags around the silhouette and in selective places rather than rendering out every strand of fur. Alright, that's the general context out of the way. Now let's get on to the good stuff by talking about the elements specific to Pinsir. So what exactly did I mean earlier when I said Pinsir's design epitomizes its typing? Well, that's done when any natural, artificial, or mythological trait or element is cleverly reimagined or turned on its head to give way to a new concept that is outright fascinating and memorable. This usually is what leads to a Pokemon that is an epitome of creative design and able to stick in our minds for decades, while most other creative concepts fade away with time. Many of the best Pokemon designs do this, and this is the source of the super effectiveness behind Pinsir and the central concept of its design. That is to say, turning Stag Beetle mandibles on its head quite literally and making it Pinsir horns. And these Pinsir horns amplify the force of a Stag Beetle's pinch to be able to easily bisect logs and other monsters like it's a walking guillotine. I gotta say, for a concept, that's more frickin' metal than Caesar, and he's a frickin' steel type. Now, while I'd just love to unpack why Pinsir's Pinsir horns are such an exceptionally ingenious concept, let me first mention the inspiration behind it, as it's always important to understand the natural evolutionary process of art in its many inspirations and permutations. I know you'll hate me for lollygagging, but this is actually integral to the conceptualization of Pinsir. You'll also learn something great, if you're a writer or artist, about not being afraid to consume any and all media for inspiration, because you'll be in good company knowing even the multi-billion-dollar franchise Pokemon has its origins and such. And no, I'm not kidding. The entire Capsule Monsters concept that ultimately evolved into Pokemon and Pokeballs had a pre-evolution in Ultraman's Capsule Kaijus. There's a reason I'm bringing this up, and that's the fact that the team over at Game Freak must have really had no other hobbies but watching kaiju flicks as kids, because kaiju media is also the inspiration for many Gen 1 Pokemon and beyond, like Pinsir. Pinsir specifically has its inspiration in the Stag Beetle kaijus within the show that helped birth its own franchise, that being Antler and Guaganda from Ultraman. But while inspiration is the wellspring of creativity, transforming that inspiration into standalone creative concepts is the mark of it. And this is true for Pinsir, whose brilliance lies in the transformative choices of a more distinguishable flat face with front-facing human eyes, giving its horns these small conical barbs that encircle them to the tip rather than lining the inside. And most obviously, the concept of making its pincers more interpretable as horns rather than a facsimile of upright Stag Beetle mandibles, like its forerunners. And while yes, making the pincers more interpretable as horns was a bloody brilliant move, how great are them barbs? Hey, what's with the cricket talks? Look, I get that Pinsir's horns are all that you want to hear about, and that these barbs are easy to overlook as something important, but as a motif, they're actually pretty great. See, these barbs distinguish its Pinsir horns from mandibles of Stag Beetles, wherein the toothy projections line the inside. This helps deviate it from being a simple insectoid facsimile in design and essence. It goes without saying that these barbs also make the horns much more menacing and metal as fuck, which goes a long way for accentuating its nature as a monster. Furthermore, it distinguishes Pinsir's horns from natural animal horns or supernatural demon horns, and gives it this badass, what would insectoid horns look like if a monstrous insect had demon or bull-like horns on their head? Seeing as we share our world with this thing, I'd say it's a bullseye on the what if. And finally, it's the fact that by being small and conical, these barbs convey to us that their functionality is not something as fortunate as quickly killing prey like a tiger's fangs, or sawing through the flesh and bones in an instant like the sharp serrated teeth of sharks. No, what awaits you if you are caught in these inescapable pincers is an even more monstrous fate, and these little barbs are the very instruments to your impending demise. You see, similar to what the conical teeth of crocodilians tell us, these barbs snare poor unfortunate souls so that they can be subjected to the full extent of the gruesome hydraulic press-like forces of its pincers. Forces which are observed to snap logs in half, mind you. Crocodile attacks are just the worst if you've seen the brutal videos of them having a go at zebras' faces, but not even crocodiles can go that far. Can you still tell me with a straight face that you want to live in a Pokemon world? Anyway, Pinsir's penchant for lovingly embracing your insides aside, what truly makes the horns that adorn Pinsir's head among the coolest and most unique in all of fiction is that these barbed horns have mobility and also a primary function in the force of their flexion as, well, you know, pincers. And it's the flexion of its horns functioning to crush things that really distinguishes them from all natural and supernatural classes of horns which are static, ornate, and meant to simply impale or toss. This also includes the horns of most other Pokemon as well. And this is exactly why the seemingly simple but ingenious hybridization of horns and mandibles are a concept that is really freaking cool. Aside from it also giving Pinsir one of the most unique and badass body plans among all bug types. Who's a badass guillotine bug monster thing? Okay, no baby talk. Got it. Phew. I know we spent quite a long time talking about the mean looking horns on this very horny boy, but Pinsir's pincers aren't all that's great about its design. Let's get into some Pokemon philosophy, shall we? The designers choosing to eschew Beetle, Elytra, and Wings for Pinsir's design and rounding out its body from 3 distinguishable body parts into 1 is a great example of Pokemon's philosophy at play. This is because the removal of these details simplifies Pinsir's form and thus allows us to immediately focus in on the most prominent feature of its design in its huge Pinsir horns. This effectively places all import on the purpose in life shared by both Pinsir and the hydraulic press channel guy. That is to say, crushing shit. And when you look at it through this perspective or through the lens of his stats, the omission of these parts does not detract anything from Pinsir, as he isn't a fast, speedy bruiser like Scizor or Scyther, but rather a bulky tank that crushes shit like a trash compactor or tank from Left 4 Dead 2. Along with these omitted parts, its tankiness is also conveyed very well by his stocky and heavily armored body and legs. So this is why the exclusion of these insectoid features is a very exemplary showcase of minimalism. However, to still evoke the insectoid nature at its core, while not detracting from its Pinsir horns, the designers made the good choice of leaving its segmentation on its design, and then making its segmentation a more prominent and central motif to fill in for the lack of Elytra and Wings. This thick, broad, and overlapping chitinous segmentation also comes off as the broad overlapping plates comprising a suit of armor, thus giving us the impression of a very tanky body. In keeping with this predominantly segmented body plan, Pinsir sports segmented arms that are long and spindly, which is great for leaving the impression of force all to the Pinsir horns on its head, and for further denoting its insectoid nature. Panning down, Pinsir's chonky legs are a nice deviation from the insect form to convey to us once more its beefy monster bug nature. This thought behind its limbs is really an underrated way of making a bug type Pokemon both bug-like and monstrous, without going too far in either direction and becoming off-putting to fans. Further, the huge and unique rounded toenails are duly noted as complementing its beefy legs. And finally, its mandibles are just about the best you could ask for an insect. Its bristly ribcage-like mandibles that line a gaping monstrous void for a mouth are so cool and alien looking, which is pleasingly in character for the insect world's bizarre anatomies and body plans. These bristly mouth parts are also so especially unique to Pinsir like its Pinsir horns, as I really haven't been able to pinpoint what real life or fictional source it is derivative from. Maybe it's an homage to the grooves on Antler's face? They do follow the same pattern, but it isn't close to being a one-to-one connection, so I just can't quite put my finger on it. But really, these one-of-a-kind mouth parts and its gaping maw are just about the best mouth parts I've seen of all bug-type Pokemon. However, if we look beyond bug types, its mouth parts do play second to those of a certain ghastly legend. Okay, and finally we have the ethology and lore, because all creators have to know that how fictional creatures interact ecologically in the world they inhabit is just as important as their design and themes. And seeing as Pinsir is neither a legendary nor a mythical Pokemon, this means Pinsir has natural ethological records that are brief instead of supernatural mythology that is extensive. But even if it is short, what is briefly mentioned of Pinsir already has me turning my green dress pants into khakis. I mean, look at this. It grips prey with its powerful pincers and will not let go until the prey is torn in half. Golly, man. I'll take on an army of Australia's bugs before I take on one Pinsir. Ah, wait, look at this entry. It adds more context. It grips prey with its pincers until the prey is torn in half. What it can't tear, it tosses far. So sure, you and some Pokemon might have a chance to get away with just being thrown. Except you don't, because another entry reads, their pincers are strong enough to shatter thick logs. Because they dislike cold, Pinsir burrow and sleep under the ground on chilly nights. I'll just take one of Saw's traps over Pinsir's industrial machine-like grip, which would slowly squeeze my breakfast burrito out of both my ass and mouth until I'm finally bisected by Pinsir's horns and flung away like the used toilet paper you finish wiping your ass with. There's really not many fates I'd prefer over being treated like a human-sized toothpaste tube. And I'm beginning to think that Pinsir's mannerly title of Sir is a name only. Might as well change his name to and I'm gonna fuck you up, son. But still, I gotta admit, Pinsir's grisly Pokédex entries effectively consolidate its monstrous nature in our minds and cements Pinsir among the most grisly and terrifying monsters cataloged in the Pokédex. Although, if you can't get past the live leak level nightmare field that is the majority of Pinsir's Pokédex entries, You'll find that the Pokédex also introduces us to the more animal side of Pinsir, showing us its characteristic affinity for tropical climates, intolerance of colder weather as it renders Pinsir immobile, and a burrowing behavior to escape the cold. I mean, I didn't expect to say this at all, but that's kind of cute. I like to imagine wrapping my Pinsir up in a bundle of scarves and sweaters for when we trek through the northern routes of Sinnoh, or when we walk outside in the middle of winter. And of course, those sweaters are actually straitjackets so that he doesn't divide me like a math equation out in public. But still, detailing these biological factors and behaviors about Pinsir that are shared with some real-life stag beetles helps round them out as a believable real-life creature, so that it's not fantastical or monstrous to the point of being unrelatable to the audience. Pinsir's no dragon that sleeps in gold and burns down cities for their city treasury. He's just a little guy that hides under logs when it gets cold out, and will snap you like a Slim Jim if you lift up said log. So just how good is Pinsir's design and concept? Well, Pinsir fans and casual enjoyers alike will both be pleased to know that it's crushingly good. It is a Pokemon based on an ingenious concept in its Pinsir horns that turns the stag beetle's massive mandibles on its head quite literally. This gives its horns the unique functionality of a guillotine, and also gives it a really unique and badass body plan among all bug Pokemon. I mean, if a Who's That Pokemon segment comes up and you're not sure it's Pinsir, just go ahead and do the human gene pool a favor by logging off of Life Bro. Pinsir also strikes that perfect balance of looking like an actual pocket monster without going too monstrous or fantastical, so as to render it wholly unrelatable and unnatural to the audience. And as we all know well, brevity is a source of wit, and Pinsir exemplifies this age-old adage with its incorporation of only the most essential insectoid and monstrous elements, while also eschewing superfluous elements that would end up clashing in or overcomplicating its design. This includes the exclusion of beetle elytra, wings, and 3 distinguishable body segments. It's anthropomorphizing, which includes having 2 arms and legs instead of 6, a bipedal stance instead of a hexapedal one, and the front-facing set of 2 human eyes instead of 2 or more compound eyes is an effective technique for making it and many bug-type Pokemon much more appealing to us. Making Pinsir a bipedal creature also helps set it apart from what is natural for its real-life insect counterparts, and thus it sports an unnatural body plan that lends to its monster nature. And finally, this walking guillotine's penchant to rip and tear just makes me want to see endless amounts of fan art of Pinsir and Doomguy just being best friends. Get on it, internet. Make this loser's dreams come true. And that's how Pinsir crushes the competition in the arena of design. Pinsir is a Pokemon with an ingenious concept that is virtually untouchable in the realm of bug types, and its design really doesn't even have a complaint from me. It's for all these reasons that I can easily state that Pinsir is objectively one of the best bug-type Pokemon ever made, for which it sits comfortably at the top of S-tier Pokemon designs, and is awarded the highest honors of the S-rank crown. And thus, Judge Glitchhead has spoken, everyone. Congratulations on your grand prize victory, Pinsir. Don't get the fuck off my contest stage. Wait, I was just kidding, Pinsir. Stay back! Cut to the outro! Cut to the... If you're enjoying the Gotta Rank 'Em All video series, subscribe for regular content, as it will soon expand to the monsters of other highly beloved franchises like Monster Hunter, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and more. Liking these videos also helps immensely, and there's a Glitchhead Patreon page in the description to help with video production as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and Godspeed on the road to making your dreams and passions a reality.